Hello, Lauren Hubele here. You're coming into another episode of Shamanism, Metaphysics and Grace. And I have the lucky job each week of interviewing my dear mentor, Jyoti Wind. Jyoti, I want to welcome you to today's interview.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Jyoti, how about if you take a moment and open up this sacred space for us?
Okay. So, just for logistics, I'm not going to turn and face each of the directions, but I'll address them and honor them. Grandmothers and grandfathers of the East, we call to you. We ask for your insights, and we thank you for this day. Grandmothers and grandfathers of the South, we call to you. Place our feet on the right path. Thank you for this day. Grandmothers and grandfathers of the West, we call to you. Bring us our healing. Show us what we need to know. And thank you for this day. Grandmothers and grandfathers of the North, wisdom keepers of the North, we call to you. We ask for your wisdom to see what we look upon, and we thank you for this day. Grandfather Sky, keeper of the starry night, we ask for your protection, and we thank you for this day. Grandmother Earth, you whose cells our bodies are made from, we ask to be reminded of our mercy and compassion, and we thank you for this day. To that wise woman spirit, that grandmother or grandfather in our heart, we ask you to be present, and thank you for this day.
Thank you.
I'd like to read something. It's called I Give Thanks. For all that has been given me, I give thanks. For all the love, the kindnesses, I give thanks. For all the life experiences, good, bad, and indifferent, I give thanks. For friends and family, supporters all, I give thanks. For the beauty of the earth as she holds me, I give thanks. And for my ability to love and be grateful, I give thanks.
Thank you, Jyoti. Jyoti, when you put together the name of this podcast, it automatically piqued some curiosity in me on this use of the term metaphysics. And being a child of the 60s, that's a topic I heard often, and also being educated Catholic, it was kind of kept over here on the side. And I'd love to unpack that term with you today. Can you share a little bit?
Metaphysics means above or beyond the physical, basically. And so it's looking at what else is going on besides the physical day-to-day life, like the fact that we have other bodies. We have the physical body, we have the etheric body, which is like the battery to the physical. We have the emotional and mental bodies, the spiritual bodies. And so it's looking at the energetics of what also is there besides just the physical form that we show up in. It's looking at the soul and how the soul chooses the life for the personality to experience, for its own growth and development and transformation. It's understanding that the soul chooses the parents and the life that it will come into via the personality because of the lessons it'll learn. And even with struggling life, even with a struggling childhood, a painful childhood, a lot of times the personality might be crying, but the soul is singing because it's getting exactly the experiences it needs. And so it's just looking at a larger frame of reference than just the physical body and what's seemingly happening.
Okay, so can you give me an example in the real world?
Okay, so when you go to sleep, your body goes to sleep, it relaxes, and your etheric body, your energy body, um, slightly separates. It's connected by a silver cord. If the cord snaps or is severed, then that's the end of this life. And that's what happens at death. That silver cord is severed and the spirit and soul go on. But in sleep, it just slightly separates enough for your body to recharge itself, for you to have adventures on the astral, mental, or other planes of existence. And that's why some dreams feel so real, because you're, in a sense, really there rather than just the mind and the brain kind of downloading adventures from the day, or fears or whatever. And so when you wake up, that body comes back together. That etheric body with the physical body comes back together. So when you suffer an injury or shock, you feel kind of strange. The effects of shock. It's because the etheric body has been pushed out just a little bit. Or when you have surgery, that
Mhm.
etheric body gets pushed out so that you won't register the pain. The body still feels the pain, but your consciousness doesn't register it. Part of your consciousness has been moved aside, let's say. And so there are things that you can do that are alternative types of things that help that body come back in after the surgery, like homeopathics and
Right.
flower essences and things like that, that help that body, that etheric body, reunite with the physical body more fully, more quickly.
So this separation that you're explaining, is that metaphysics?
It's a metaphysical way of looking at what happens in surgery or with shock.
So metaphysics is really a lens of how we might explain what's happening in our life.
Yes, yes.
And what's informed your lens of metaphysics?
Well, I studied a lot of metaphysics in the 70s, and that was just part of my growth and knowledge gathering kind of thing. And there were certain things that just stayed with me, you know, um, whether it's, people who can read auras, they're seeing that energetic body around the person's physical form, and trusting those things that you get when you look at someone, not judgments, but just observations. I learned that in when a soul takes form, when a person is born, that there is a heart seed atom that is transferred from the other bodies to this physical body, the etheric and the physical body, that carries the um, bulk of the karma of this person in this life, of what they came to experience, good, bad, and different. Okay. And so this heart seed atom releases energetics like iron filings carry oxygen through the blood, so having an amount of iron in the blood helps you be oxygenated, your blood. So the heartseed atom are like energies that go out into the blood to draw magnetically to you what you need to experience in this life. So it draws your karma to you. Okay. If you inundate yourself with alcohol, the heartseed atom stops releasing these magnetic energies to draw your karma to you, and the person gets stuck and they stay where they are. No judgment. It's just a way of looking at things. And so, but as long as you are growing, alive, conscious, willing to see what the truth is, just being alive and breathing actually allows these karmic experiences to come to you so that you can move beyond them, so that you can grow, so that you can transform what you brought in with you into something better, higher, deeper, more conscious.
Hmm. Hmm. What's coming up for me as I'm listening to you, Jyoti, is this idea of fate versus destiny that so many people get confused with. And I think this explains a little bit of how we come in and how we move towards our destiny.
And I think our destiny is just soul growth. I
Yeah.
think our destiny is just, to repair, redo, and learn and grow in the course of the life.
Right.
And that it's more about expanding our consciousness and our heart. Loving ourselves, loving other people, being grateful for what's given. Gratitude keeps the door open for anything that's coming next, in for your own growth and conscious awakening and awareness. And so I think cultivating gratitude and being open to what's coming um, is helpful, is really helpful.
Expanding consciousness is a term that we often heard in the 60s, and it had a little different connotation, I think. Maybe not. How would you define that? What does that mean for you?
Consciousness and awareness are like synonymous to me in a way, in a large way. Um, so there's a couple trains of thought going on here at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we came into a post-Victorian culture, those of us born in the 40s, 50s, 60s. We came into a post-Victorian mores and way of looking at life. And so I think that there needed to be a breakthrough in the consciousness of people, of souls. And souls brought it in with them who were born in the 40s, 50s, 60s in order for change to occur, okay, for there to be a leap in consciousness, so to speak. And so there were various tools that were suddenly available for those who wanted to experiment, that opened up things for those who didn't want to experiment that way. And it became part of our consciousness, that expanded view, that wider view of who we are, why we're here, and what's going on. And so that expanded consciousness went from the druggy days of the 60s into the 70s and became all of a sudden in the counseling office and
Mhm.
working in psychotherapy, and became more of a underneath it was all an evolutionary cue. It's like people taking care of themselves. So women were raised to take care of everybody else. Okay, that's a given. And so then it became a psychological point in the 80s and 90s, to not only set an example to the young women coming behind you, but as a point of self-love and self-caring that you gave to yourself as well. You included yourself in the equation. I feel like at this point in time, it is an evolutionary cue that we must honor ourselves as women. We must make room for equality in all different ways, racial, gender equality, all of it. It's part of our evolution. It's no longer a psychological issue. It's become an evolutionary cue of where we're going, and the equality and the consciousness and the willingness to love ourselves as well as other people, but especially as women, our desire to nurture and love ourselves.
What you're saying is really describing my understanding of our evolution as we move into this Aquarian age, that we are coming back to a one world, one sense of humanity rather than this separateness. Is that?
I believe that's true. They call it, the golden age of Aquarius. I mean, it's a 2160-year age, and we're like on the cusp. We're not there yet. I mean, if you look around, it doesn't look like a golden age yet. No. So the cusp is probably about 250, 300 years of moving, incrementally more and more in consciousness over into this new age of equality, humanitarianism, one mind, one world kind of consciousness. And we're not there yet. I know when Pluto goes into Aquarius next year, everybody's going to be singing, oh, we're in the Aquarian age, but not really. We're getting ready. Step by step, we're getting ready. We're moving into that consciousness where you have the ear of deity yourself. You don't need intercessors between you, like priests and all those kinds of beings. You don't need that anymore. You can have the ear of deity, whatever you feel deity is. You have that ear yourself. You can have that experience with God or goddess or creator energy, whatever you want to call it. And that's part of the Aquarian age and the equality of all beings.
It makes me think about where we began our conversations 2 episodes ago is, Indigenous people didn't see a separation, right? They saw themselves as part of the creator, part of the animals, part of the seasons. There was no separation. And through evolution, we have been cultured to separate, and there are powers greater than us, and we can't connect with those powers. We need people in between. And we haven't only done that spiritually, Jyoti, we've done that in how we educate our children, in how we take care of our health, and we can continue on through that list. But it seems to me, going full circle, this is bringing us back to where we all began.
Yes. And so, from a metaphysical point of view, we were one with the creator, and then, but it was an unconscious oneness.
Ah.
And so then it's called de-evolution. We devolved down through matter so that we can become consciously aware and then desire to reunite in that evolution, not de-evolution, but evolution, and work toward becoming one with that consciousness of creator energy, consciously and willingly, and have that desire for that experience. So it's like going away from source individuating, knowing who we are, and then having that desire, that natural desire to reunite with consciousness, with creator consciousness.
That cycle seems to be replicated when we raise children.
Yes.
We move
Well,
away from family and parents and find ourselves, right? And then we come back.
yes. Yes, yes. And as the creator of family, we also watch our children. You know, they're one with us in the beginning, in a sense, even in consciousness and thinking. And then they reach a point where they start thinking for themselves. And then they eventually become our friends, hopefully.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. And when we can understand that and not take it personal, as in all of this that we're talking about, right?
Yes.
It's not about things happening to us. It's that we're really a part of a bigger scheme going on.
Oh,
And,
absolutely. A much larger cosmic plan than we are perhaps everyday awareness of.
right. So if someone wanted to learn a little bit more about them, do you have some ideas of how they might discover more of this information?
You know, it's been about 50 years.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what's out there these days as far as books or teachers. I had my set of learning tools at that time, and which also led me to meditation. Meditation was a big part of that learning curve. And that became a real source for me after a while, also. Um, but there's, you know, the old masters are still around, you know, their writings, Helene Blavatsky with the Theosophical Society. I think the Theosophical Society is still alive and well in Wheaton, Illinois, and they probably have a whole list and library of metaphysical tomes. And the Lucis Trust, which was Alice Bailey's writings, who I loved. And there's still some metaphysical societies around that you can who have libraries that you can borrow from and learn from the old teachers, the old masters.
Okay. Okay. Perhaps we can include a couple of those in the show notes. That might be helpful for folks.
Okay.
I'm glad you mentioned meditation because that was also coming up for me in this as we're opening our consciousness. This is awareness, but it's also mindfulness, and that might feel a little more familiar to much of our audience here.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, Thich Nhat Hanh comes to mind with his mindfulness and way of peace.
Yeah.
And there's, you know, there's many teachers out there who are teaching real uh, valuable mindfulness techniques and ways of looking at life and not taking things personally.
And I don't think we can say that enough because it brings me right back is this whole process, again, going back to our first recording, is about getting out of our own way.
Yes, yes. And one of the four agreements is not taking things personally, you know. Um, even when you're dealing with friends, even when you're dealing with, you know, real life issues, knowing that a lot of times the other person might be projecting onto you who they think you are or what they would like to see happen, and it really has nothing to do with you.
I
Not
think
at
most of
all.
the time it doesn't, right?
Right, it's more about what's going on for them, and you just happen to be the screen that they're projecting onto, in a sense. I was listening to a very short clip of a film of Ram Dass last night that somebody had posted, and he said, if you're with a friend and you're driving through a town, and if you're hungry, you'll notice all the restaurants and grocery stores. And the other person who's riding with you, if he's hearing some funny noises in the car and hoping that you're going to be able to continue the journey, I'm badly paraphrasing here, and he will notice all the garages and the auto supply stores. So even though you are side by side, you are each having such a different experience and in a different universe, basically, from each other. So everybody has their own experience, their own, you could call it hallucination in some ways, but yet you can be standing next to each other and be in totally different universes. And so sometimes what somebody projects onto you that they think you're doing or where they think you're at is so foreign that you can feel this has nothing to do with me. I'm not sure what's happening here. And it's more about the other person than it is about you. So not taking it personally because it has nothing to do with you.
Well, we've just gone through 2 years of a lot of taking it personally and a lot of operating in multiple viewpoints.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Yeah, and it was emphasized because of the pandemic. But I mean, in day-to-day life, everybody is basically in their own world.
right, right. You know, that's something I've become more and more aware of as I expand my consciousness in this work is, how to, when someone comes in from left field like that, how to actually engage with them to understand rather than, um, we have these habitual patterns, right? Fight or flight. So typically we'll go, what the heck are you saying? I didn't do that, or
Right.
which is the sympathetic fight response, or but those of us that have that um, inner child that likes to disappear, right? We'll just swallow it up and okay, I hope that's not about me. But I think there's something different we can be doing as we move into this new age and say, hey, that sounds really rough. What's that about for you?
Yes. Yes. What's that really all about for you? Yes. Or, coming from an iMessage point of view, I mean, it's very overly simplified, but it's just saying, I'm not sure that this has anything to do with me. It's speaking for yourself. It keeps the ball in your court. It keeps you empowered, or this feels uncomfortable to me, or I'd like to know more. I'd like to know more, and just holding your own strength of who you know yourself to be, and that this other person is going through some difficulty,
Yeah.
some type of difficulty in themselves. You know, um, I've had some interesting occasions at times, and especially as a mom with kids, to kind of get out of my role as mother and that whole sticky situation and relationship sometimes, and just step outside of that and just realize that this person is really suffering and that they're hurting, and that I just happen to look like a good sounding board in that moment to them, but that this was more about what was going on for them and where they were suffering. And can I hold that space of not taking it personally and just maybe making contact with them? What's happening inside for you? Or it looks like there's a lot of fear up here, or it looks like you're in pain. I mean, trying to keep the you out of it as much as possible. You know what I mean? It looks like maybe there's some confusion going on here, or pain and suffering. And if you want to talk about it, I'm willing to listen.
Yeah.
Especially respectfully, I'm willing to listen.
And that's such a beautiful, compassionate response. And unfortunately, because of this fear narrative that has been playing out, so many of us have just retreated, right, from
Yes.
those opportunities to connect with other humans and hold space for whatever's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we have to feel resilient and strong ourselves.
Yes, we do. And we need to choose our situations, you know, not when you're tired, not when you're exhausted, not when you're trying to figure something out for yourself. I mean, sometimes you don't have that moment to choose. You know what I mean? It's just suddenly there. And, but through practice, you come to a place where you realize, this isn't mine. This isn't about me. This is about the other person. If I can hold space for them, that's great. If I can't, then I have the right to say, I'd just as soon do this at another time, or I'll get back to you on that.
Those are all perfect answers and appropriate for however you're feeling at the time. I think this is the next level. The first level is the self-awareness and the self-consciousness and tapping into our own voice.
Yes. And our willingness to take care of ourselves and give ourselves the space we need when we need it, instead of the knee jerk reaction of, well, I have to be here. I have to do this. It's a place of no choice. And so the more choice we give ourselves, I mean, some of us are raised, being told what to do. Every 2 minutes you're told what to do. And so coming to the place where you realize in every cell of your body that you have choice, that you can say no, that you can do something kind for yourself instead of taking care of somebody else's feelings. I mean, this is major revelation sometimes in a person's life.
Sure.
And so, the awareness isn't just a metaphysical awareness of your soul piece in the midst of the body of the creator, let's say. It's also bringing it into day-to-day life with very real, seemingly real situations you find yourself in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when somebody's accusing you of something and you realize it's more about them than you, and they're just projecting it. They haven't seen a way to own it yet.
Yeah. All beautiful advice and things that we can practice. We get to practice every day. Every day we step outside that door, and sometimes we don't even have to step outside the door.
You just have to wake up and take a breath.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Jyoti, we started on metaphysics and we've been on a lovely magic carpet ride for this time. Do we want to come back to that at all? Is there anything else you feel needs to be shared?
Nothing comes to mind.
Great. Great.
Yeah. Nothing comes to mind.
I so appreciate this conversation. Jyoti, if folks want to hear more about your work and be in contact with you, how can they do that?
I have a website, www.jyotiwindastrology.com. And you can email me through the website and you can see what I'm offering.
Wonderful. Thanks again. And thanks to all of our listeners.